How's it going, everyone? It's Josh Elbow, and in today's video, I want to go over something that's made what I feel is probably the biggest impact on my daily discipline actions that I've had in 2018. It's something that I'm seeing a lot of people not doing just because, one, we were never taught it in school. But based on the impact that it's made for me personally, I want to be able to share that with you guys so that you can use it to get ahead and have the best understanding that you can possibly have of it. So that's why I'm making this video today. It's going to be super simple, so I wouldn't necessarily worry about taking notes in this. Just take a huge mental note for it. Thank you for watching the video as always. And then if you have any questions about the specifics of some of the stuff that we go over in the video, shoot me a message on Instagram at @thejoshelbow or email me at summitsme@gmail.com. And if I have time, I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. So let's get on with it. So the biggest thing, right? And in personal development and all this stuff, they tell you like what's simple, the things that are simple and easy to do are also simple and easy not to do. And it's such a simple concept that I personally was never taught. Maybe you were taught it before, and if you were, then you're probably ahead of the game. But the biggest thing that I learned last year more so is that no matter what, you have to be putting a percentage of everything you make away. The concept is called pay yourself first. All the billionaires talk about it. Robert Kiyosaki talks about it. But until I read Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins, I didn't have like a concrete strategy of, well, okay, like what percentage do I take and where do I put it, and then how do I invest it, and where do I get the best return, and what happens if the market goes up or down, and how do I diversify and all that stuff. And back maybe a couple of years ago, I didn't have to worry about diversification because everything was short-term flips. How can I turn $1,000 into 10 as quickly as possible? So because it's a lot easier to make back $1,000 or 10 grand or like anything less than 50 grand within a short amount of time versus like if you have a huge lump sum and you don't diversify at all. And let's say for a stock, for example, if you put $100,000 into a stock and it takes a 50% hit, like GE was down a lot, but GE was down like 50% this year. So if you go from 100K to 50 grand and you're only making 50 grand a year, a 50% hit on a stock, you have to make 100% return to make your money back, which might be another 7 years versus having a diversified portfolio or putting the money in an index or whatever. But I was never taught this stuff, and it's been something that I've been able to share with the people that are in my mentorship program. And even though it's just the short-term side of it, the long-term effect of that, and we'll get into the compounding after, it's made it like the biggest difference between 2017 and 2018, because 2017 was a great year. This was 2 years ago, so this year I was in Dallas for probably 6 months, but last year, and surprisingly, I didn't go to Florida at all this year. I was in Florida 3 times, I was in Bama, like I was gone for 8 months of the year, and I still had an amazing year financially. It was my first year going to Florida, because last year was my first year like being able to afford to travel after like the work I'd put in previously, not being able to, like growing up and stuff. But just because I made a lot, I wasn't saving a lot. It was, oh, like, what do I feel like doing? Yeah, don't even look at the bill type shit. And even like at one point I was looking at photos from back when I was in Florida of like cigars and champagne stuff, and like I was looking at my body, and that's why I got a gym membership this year, because I used to just work out at college back in the day. But I was like looking at the effects that I was looking at the results that I was getting, and I didn't like them. I was gaining weight. I've never not had abs in my life. I was making poor health decisions because I finally had the money to do these things and try these things, and it was more of a like overcompensate facade because I couldn't afford to previously. Now I could do like buy whatever I wanted basically. But just because I made a lot, I wasn't saving a lot. So at the end of the year, it was like I didn't have enough to show for it aside from the experience side as to what I actually did. So last year I read Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. It's like a 560 some page, but I think it's like 600 page book. And he talks about like every single billionaire he sat down with talks about you need to be taking a portion of everything you make and putting it away for retirement. Whether you're putting $2,000 a year in a Roth IRA so that your gains are tax free when you're 65 or whatever. And I'm not sure if that's the limit because I'm not a CFP or I don't know finance that well. I just know what's worked for me. So that's why I'm trying to share with you guys. Take everything I say with a grain of salt. Feel free. Don't believe a word I say. All that stuff. But this is what's worked for me. This is what's worked for the people the people that I'm mentoring. And this is what the billionaires have said time and time and time again. And even like people that have reached out to me personally, just like friends and stuff on Instagram. Like, what do I need to be doing? Like, from a personal finance standpoint, you have to be putting away at least 10, like start at 10%, even if you can't do it. And from this perspective that Tony Robbins uses is, if the government, like let's say, Josh, I can't afford to do 10% right now. Like all my money is going towards my expenses, my car, my insurance, my rent, like my house, whatever it is. If the government came to you and said they were going to tax you 10%, and you couldn't do anything about it. You'd complain, you wouldn't be happy, but you'd pay it because you have to, otherwise you'd go to jail. So you'd have enough of a reason, a why to do it. So the why in this case is your future. There's no excuse for you to not be like a millionaire, if not a multimillionaire, when you're like 60, 65, unless based on the strategies that people have already seen in place. There's one guy who there's like a post office person who never made like more than $14K a year, but he took like 50 or 60 or 70% of everything that he made. And when he retired, he had like 7 or 10 or some crazy $1 million, but he never made more than 50K a year. So how is that? Because of the compounding interest. The younger you start, I wish I would have started when I was like, if I look back, so I know I track how much I make every year and stuff. If I look back, even the past 3 years versus just what I've saved this year, the amount more that I've had just because I was like, so one, it creates an income. So if you own, let's say for stocks specifically, if you own stocks that give you a dividend, you can create a dividend income out of that. If you're just like the security of bonds, you can get a bond income out of that and doing 2-3% a year, if that. But at a minimum, it's another stream of income that you can use to, and then just use the dividends to reinvest, or you can use it as like a cash payment. So if you can get up to like 1.5, I was talking to my buddy Carl about this. You can get up to like $1 million, 1.2, 1.5 million invested in the market. Let's say the market does 10% a year. You're making what, 150? You're making like 150K a year just on that money sitting there. That's no leverage, which I wouldn't recommend not leveraging, but that's like the super, super simple side of it. But the accumulation part and getting to that point is what takes the most time. But so personally, I started at 10%. 10% was nothing. It was like I had so much excess. So I moved up to 25%, moved up to 50%. Now I'm doing like 60 to 75%. And then I want to take as much, like I want to take every penny I make and just put it back into like for when I'm 80 or 90. And I'm not saying don't live now, just because that matters too. But like, if every penny I can take, or let's say for simplicity, if I know that every dollar I put away into whatever market, I expect 10 cents from that dollar for as long as that dollar sits there for the rest of my life. So every 10 grand, that's $1,000 a year. Every 100 grand, that's 10 grand a year. Every dollar I can, that's like it's not, obviously there's no guarantees with investing and stuff. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't know much about this. I only know what I have learned. So please feel free to rip me apart on stuff that you might know more than me about. I love you too, because that'll make both of us better. But personally, it's made a huge impact just on how much I have accumulated over time. This is no leverage, but literally start with 10%. You need to be putting away a portion of your make. And I'm gonna go get my phone so that we can show you the compound interest. Even at like $200 a month over a 40-year period, it comes out to like 1.3 million or something. So for 40 years at 10% interest rate with no initial contribution, because everybody starts at zero, and the monthly addition at 200, if you guys can see that, it's going to come out to 1,291,170.20, with the contributions only being 96,000. So if you could turn 100 grand into 1.2 million over a 40-year period, it makes no sense to not. And then let alone if you put it into a Roth IRA. So I'm going to say the limits on a Roth IRA are like $2 grand a year. Till you're 50 or 5, or I don't know the specifics on this, but let's say a 40-year period, you put it into the Roth IRA. Then the gains on that are tax-free because the taxes were paid on the money that went into it initially. But at that point, there's no excuse for everyone to not accumulate that wealth, and you can afford to. And if you like force yourself to be able to afford to, push yourself a little bit. $200 a month, you can't fucking make an extra $200. You could fucking go, like, there's no excuse unless you're just lazy or uninspired, but like paint a vision for yourself of why you need it so that when you're 65 you can have money saved up. And I don't want to hear, like, obviously if we can make 10 million next week, I'm all for it. I'd rather make the money now, but I don't want that to be an excuse to not be putting a portion of everything you make away, because you can always just leverage stuff and in the short term if you have to, because you see the long-term vision of where you want to be. But don't let the short term be an excuse for you not to have a successful long term. Like, all I can say is it's made the biggest impact on me this past year. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. I hope you got some value out of it. If you did, feel free to subscribe so that you get and click the bell too, because I want to say if you click the bell, then you'll get notifications for my other videos. And the subscriber rate's been great lately. Everybody that's been watching has been subscribing. It's been going up a lot. So thank you guys for that. Like I said in the beginning of the video, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to reach out to you. I've been super busy with my mentorship program now because I'm working with people one-on-one. But if you want to work with me one-on-one, shoot me a DM at thejoshelbo on Instagram. Leave a comment below down here and I'll get a hold of you as soon as I can because like I said, I've been super busy. Or email me at summitsme@gmail.com. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you guys next time.